Batman movie review. I'm going to hit on some points and things like that and tell you what I think. Now, if you don't realize this movie kind of went from hand to hand to hand for a little bit. I am sitting down, drinking water, so apologize if you hear the pauses. I'll try to cut them out, but you might hear a couple. It went from Ben Affleck. I knew they were talking about who was going to do what. Then it turned into where it ended up getting Matt Reeves, but it was still going to be Ben Affleck, and it was going to be a movie dealing with him. I guess it was going to be that detective story of Matt Reeves, but then Matt Reeves wrote the script because Ben Affleck wrote the script. It just went back and forth like crazy. A lot of minutia, but in the end, just to clear things up, this is a brand new take on Batman, another reboot of the character. Yes, I know. But this is Matt Reeves' movie, and this is the guy who did the excellent Planet of the Apes trilogy, so I'm in for it. He was kind of one of the drawing factors to it. I did not have a problem with Robert Pattinson being it, but then again, I've seen other movies with him in it besides Twilight, Tenet, Metropolis, Water for Elephants, Lighthouse. So to me, this guy is actually an accomplished actor. It's just that one defining movie was because that was like his first starring franchise. We have a new version of the Riddler. Um, he's new on scene. He's a serial killer. By the way, just let you know, this stuff is I'm keeping this pretty much spoiler free or very low spoiler. If you've seen a couple of the trailers, this should be in there. Only thing I'm talking about, except for the one thing which I will tell you when that comes up, is stuff that's from the trailers that may be going a little deeper, but nothing of spoiler territory. All right. So, I just wanted to get all that out the way so people, you're not worried or what's going on. Or if you've only watched, like, the one trailer like my friend, then don't watch a review until you watch the movie. But anybody who's watched at least one of the trailers, this stuff was in it. So like I said, it's a new on-screen Riddler, and he's a serial killer. I feel like the Riddler in the comics and the shows doesn't get as much love as he should. He does always show up. Pretty much almost every Batman cartoon, I think, except for Beware the Beware the Batman. Because there's the Batman cartoon with the Jackie Chan Adventure guys. He was in that. Then there's the other one. I think it's Beware the Batman. The last one that had Katana. Yeah, I think that's Beware the Batman. That show was interesting. Um, there was definitely issues with it. I understand why it ended because I was annoyed by some of it. But they tried to use that show to showcase some of the lesser villains, and I totally appreciate that because I think the Joker is way overused um, compared to other villains. Like the Riddler you could do a lot with this character, and they show it in here. Um, it shows him how very strong and how potential the character is, how the character is of his mind. Just like the Gotham show, it was like that too. I really like that. Because he might quite possibly be my favorite Batman villain, the Riddler himself. I like that the Riddler tests his mind and tries to hit Batman from a different angle than just physically messing with him. Where the Joker just tries to get on his nerves, like Riddler he kind of likes the idea of matching wits with him. And I really appreciate that. And I'm talking about Riddler as a character. A little bit in here too, so it was fine. Um, but I thought he was handled extremely well, and I like when they did the thing with the costume in the end. I kind of like that whole makeshift kind of what he did and how his suit came to be, and it was very different. It didn't have the flashy suit thing. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but it was kind of like more closer to the body jumpsuit. But the Riddler symbol meant something this time. It wasn't just the question mark to do the question mark. The question mark actually meant something, and I like that. And I like the way they handled him, and I like the way he covered his face. Like I liked this kind of this serial killer take on him and where Riddler's head's at, kind of thing. I thought that was very interesting. We had a very brooding Batman played by Robert Pattinson, so let you know he is very brooding. But I'll get to him in a minute. Now, this film is finally what I've been clamoring for in a Batman movie, an investigative, world's greatest detective Batman. Now, we got glimpses of detective work in like the 89 movie where he did the thing with the CD, which I think that was the one where he like he ended up scratching the CD like a record, which still cracks me up because he's like, Vick it, Vick it, Vick it. And I'm like, yeah, because that's how CDs work. And even as a kid, I was like, if I do that, the CD's going to like scratch the oblivion. But it was still funny to see with the laser disc. um, but and we did get a glimpse of that also in Begins when they were trying to figure out the bullet in the wall, and he would like shoot the thing to test it. I don't actually know exactly. I kind of got an idea what he was looking for with the forensics, but it was also weird because it felt like it didn't need to do all that to get the same answer. But I guess he felt he needed to get the answer, but literally the CSIs could have probably did that in the span of a day. But it was cool to see, like, it showed he was trying to figure out stuff. But let's be real. The live action Batman films are more like James Bond movies with him wearing a costume and less Sam Spade. And for anybody who doesn't know who Sam Spade is, Maltese Falcon, very famous noir kind of detective when you see Lady in Red and stuff. But just look up Maltese Falcon and you'll get the idea because this was a noir story. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a Batman story that was very noir, very detective. You know, he put hands on people when he had to, but it was about him figuring it out. And this really had a great mystery on mystery kind of thing, and I appreciated that a lot because I was like, I want to see something different with this Batman movie, and it felt different because of it. I wanted to see Batman work in detective. I want them to touch in these other angles that we haven't really seen in Batman before in live action film. The city of Gotham itself, this is probably the darkest Gotham I've seen. It brings it home. The only other one I could say remotely reminded me of this Gotham was Joker's Gotham from the Joker film in the 80s. A lot of people may not think of that, but that city it felt very just city down on its luck kind of thing, even though it felt like New York in the 80s kind of thing. But the rest of them, it's always been something. Like, but this particular one, I even heard that it bothered some people or some of the critics because it made them think of how dreary and reminded them of their own issues at home in their own cities, which is impressive because deal with it. But it is interesting to hear them go, wow, this city made me think of my place and how crappy my place is because the Gotham was really bad in here. And it was very dark. I mean, normally you'll see Gotham, it's like, oh, they have really nice architecture and history in the buildings. And it just feels like the city is bad, but there's good, really good places in it. It's like a normal city. You just don't go down that area, you know? Um, or you always see it with the bright spots, or hey, you know what, the mob is okay, but they're usually over there while everyone else is over there. But I think that also goes with the type of crowds that Bruce is normally around. Um, so that's why you always feel like it's not as dark as it could be. And I digress. In this movie, it shows that Gotham is just mostly a trash place to live. Like the sun went down, people are getting robbed and everything else. Most of the movie actually takes place at night. You do have a sunrise scene and a sunset scene, but mostly takes place at night. And if I remember correctly, one daytime scene. Like the movie heavily takes place at night, so I appreciated that because it really wanted to show you that underbelly of the city, and I thought that was perfect. Now because of this, I that because it's so much nighttime, he's Batman probably 98% of the movie. I really dug that. I like the fact that we just got to see a lot of Batman. It's not like a back and forth. You get some back and forth, but it's mostly like reading a Batman comic. He's on mission. You're doing something. You're dealing with like Long Halloween or something. Yeah, you'll see him beat Bruce a little, but that's not what we're here for. And that's what this felt like. It felt like, no, we want Batman. You want to get your some Batman. So if you've been feeling like these movies are lacking Batman, this movie will definitely satiate that appetite. The cast also did very good. You had Colin Farrell as the Penguin is practically unrecognizable, and Bravo, he knocked this out the park. I don't want to say too much. He's in there and he's perfect, and he feels like he could do more. Like it feels like he can be something that's a constant, like how the Nolan movies had Crane be a constant. Um, it just felt like that. Really like that. The way he talked, the way he was. And he was a piece of the puzzle, but he wasn't the puzzle, and I thought that was cool because you could play him up later or keep him the way he was, and he works perfectly either way. But great performance by Colin Farrell. Um, just like I like John Leguizamo when he played it, kind of like it felt like that. Like it really felt like Colin Farrell was playing someone completely different. Kind of reminded me of Dick Tracy in a good way, with the villains in their face masks, like what Robert De Niro did to play them when they do the Dick Tracy villains. Yeah. If you don't remember that, go watch the Dick Tracy, or go look up Robert De Niro and Dick Tracy, the movie with Warren Beatty, and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's what this felt like, and I appreciated that. I loved that about that movie. Um, then you had Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. She was excellent. This role fit her really well. Now that whole weird thing, because all of a sudden I'm starting to hear her now start to go like super feminist, which is really weird because the roles she's taken and the stuff she's done doesn't fit where she's going with this attitude, with her beauty and using her things like that. So when she did that whole "don't sexualize me" statement, which just sounded stupid and dumb because you're playing Catwoman. Catwoman uses her. It was weird, and it actually did have me worried because Catwoman uses her femininity. She uses her. I even watched that Catwoman cartoon. She did it to get to something. She uses her beauty and her sexuality. She uses all the tools at her this like that she has in her bag to do that, and she knows she's a very attractive woman, so she utilizes that. But she also is not stupid. She's very smart. She's a great cat burglar. She's athletic. Like there's a lot of factors to that. And in this in this movie, she kind of uses some of her feminine wiles in some aspects. Not so much to get advantage, but she like dresses a certain way. But you know it's to get certain attention to distract from what she's trying to get. And that's what I was like, that's weird why you said don't do that. Because then it makes me want to think of doing that. Now, it also was funny woman uses her, her power and her things. This is why I find it ridiculous. There is definitely an eye candy scene in this film with Zoe Kravitz, who is like with her getting a shape, and I'm talking about from a shape point of view, like a physical actor point of view. I think she's really gotten in like the perfect shape to play this character. She looks amazing for this character to fit. Like I felt like she could physically do the things she did. Um, and they did have like I said, that's why I found it weird with the whole femininity, which is Selena Kyle's power and ridiculous. There is a scene that is kind of woke. I'll touch on that later, and I felt like she had input in that scene, so I will touch on that later. But however, besides all that, how she was written and the way she was written very strong, and kept many of the elements that makes Catwoman Catwoman. I felt she, in more recent history from the last three incarnations of Catwoman, I feel like she's been the best one of the three. I really do. I think she did well because she still kept the thief motif, but the more recent comics, the more modern versions, it's kind of almost like they're starting to slowly make her a Robin Hoody kind of character where she's doing thieving, but it's usually for a good cause now, or a purpose, and not just because she wants a diamond kind of thing. And it was very cool to see the Bat villains who are already in play without origins. It felt realistic. Gotham has been here for a long time, and you're just taking a glimpse into that world itself. So I thought that was very good. Like I said, also, even for the Riddler, he is like one layer of the whole cake, and I thought that was great. Important layer, but it's like this. It was very multi-layered as a story. And I love how Batman has to solve some of these riddles and traps in the games that he plays. Um, and Riddler is just straight up messed up and dark. And the Riddler has a lot of questions surrounding him as to why and what, which I thought was very cool, very well handled with his intelligence. Now, that sweet, sweet Batmobile. Now, my friend argues, and my other friend argued this too, but was arguing about the tumbler. And to me, the Tumbler was a cool vehicle, but it was never the Batmobile. And he's like, even me did it earlier today, which is, or yesterday or whatever. He's like, no, the Tumbler was the Batmobile. I was like, it was never the Batmobile. It was never called the Batmobile. It wasn't the Batmobile. It never got to be completed as the Batmobile. His brother was like, oh, well, it was painted black. I'm like, yeah, but you can paint any car and say it's a Batmobile. So what? You paint your car black, now you go, it's a Batmobile? No, there's some aspects to it. The Tumbler, it felt like it was something utilized as disposal or whatever. Um, then I pointed something out to him, and I kind of got him on this. I said, if you keep talking about the Batmobile, because we were talking about the car, and he was like, yeah, the Batmobile. I said, then why, if it's the Batmobile, and everyone keeps saying it's the best Batmobile, why is everyone I talk to, including you, always referring to it as the Tumbler and not the Batmobile? Boom. People don't call it the Batmobile, they call it the Tumbler. So it's not the Batmobile. Because if you talk about 1989 when they go Batmobile, you talk about the Batman Forever, Batmobile. They always call it the Batmobile. That's the one they don't call the Batmobile. So I'm like, people don't even call it that. Just saying. But this thing looked like it was a muscle car with a rocket. And yes, and it works. And when the car kicks on, and I'm not a big car person myself, but everybody in that theater, you could feel it. Every gearhead feels when they hear that engine roar and rev. And they took a sweet insert car here for any of gearheads who love a car. Insert that car. That's what it was, where you got to feel what they feel with that sound design hitting your chest, and you're like, oh hell yeah. Like, that's what that was. And you got to feel what they felt. That Batmobile made you just want to just jump in there and be like, I'm Batman now. um Scene stands out, like, wow, it's the best I've seen in a Bat movie. It's actually one of the best chase scenes I've probably ever seen, period. I really enjoyed it. It was excellent, it was exciting, and according to Reeves, all of it was like very real. Like the big explosion scene with the car flying through the thing was a real car, not CG, which reminded me of the old school All for Nothing kind of days, Death Race 2000 kind of vibes. It felt very gritty, and I really liked that. The score was fire, so I looked up the composer, and it's Michael Giacchino. I think I'm saying his name right. So that was just on point. This music was perfect. That's all I really had to say about that. And Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon. He plays the part like in the comics and is possibly my favorite character in the movie. I like the way J.K. Simmons did it. I like the way Gary Oldman was. But Gary Oldman kind of was a helper, but he was more like a liaison, where Wright kind of encapsulated Gordon, and they kind of had that partnership and that close friendship. Gotham kind of captured that too. And it was the way I really wanted to see, where Gordon is very involved. Um, and on himself, he seems like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders, which was very interesting. Andy played a good and likable Alfred, and I enjoyed, you know, where he helps him reaching, and I enjoyed he's reaching for a form of connection with Bruce in a way. Like, they're still trying to make that connection, and I thought that was very interesting. He's kind of a plot device, like the previous Michael Caine was, but Michael Caine was like a super plot device and a metaphor half the time, but that's like a Nolan trope. I feel like there's more that will grow from this, but he was there to be one of the key moments for Batman. Now on to Pattinson, and the complaint I hear people about with the dumb emo Bruce complaint. It's funny with Batman how there is a comic called Year Zero, Mask of the Phantasm, and many other beginning Batman stories. Well, I should say some people, not everyone, missed the mark on the dark recluse Bruce Wayne. Hell, even Begins has it like he forgets that people are there until later. He didn't become that Bruce Wayne costume until the end of that movie, by the way. And Keaton was a dark Bruce Wayne all the way through, and if you try to deny that, you're wrong, my friend. You are wrong. Keaton was a dark Bruce Wayne. He was not a happy-go-lucky Bruce Wayne. He was very mysterious, very off-putting, and very dark. And even though there was a little bit of a dichotomy between him and Batman, it wouldn't be a leap at all to go, yeah, I think that guy's Batman. So yeah. Um. Anyway, this is Batman Year Two. He is still in the beginning. I only care about stopping crime. When you get to the separate version of Batman, Bruce, real Bruce, he shouldn't be there yet. People forget Bruce's rage incarnate and has a lot of issues. So he's one note until he isn't, and also he isn't in that way from being away from humanity that all Batman has. But that's part of the story too. He's being in his second year, seems to be growing in the myth. Some criminals won't walk in the shadows when they see the signal. Others view him more like a freak in a suit. And I appreciate that since this is after year one, so the whole big vampire bat or mythical creature isn't really there anymore, and the real fear is starting to set in that this dude will just pummel me. You even see his approach change and how he rescues people in the beginning of the film versus how he rescues a person later, or people, I should say, later in the film. Like there's a growth there. New and unexpected situations that do show him, and he starts to change and grow slowly. As being around people will affect you, and it does affect him. There is a situation where he goes from in your face brute force, but the second time he like maneuvers and releases, and he realizes that using the stealth is a better situation and it makes it easier. So he like learned that. I liked how he did that. He is Batman still finding his way, and I appreciate that. And he makes mistakes. There's even a situation where he's like running at something. He's like, "Whoa!" Like he had a moment where he thought about it. And he was like, "I gotta center myself. Maybe it's not a okay, all right." And it was like that, and then I really like that. It has that feeling of Long Halloween, Batman Eternal, and I would like to see more of this. Finally, the fights, they felt like a combo of Bale, but you could actually see the fight with the brutality of Affleck and the poise of Keaton. And I was pleasantly surprised that fans are very receptive to a noir kind of story because I don't people to be very into noir stories all the time. Oh, and I also love how he comes out of the shadows. Like when he's about to do something, you hear like the spurs and the doom, doom, doom. That was awesome because he wants you to know his presence is there, all like out of nowhere from the shadows. So that was really cool. Um, so I guess I'll just say this. So, but then I'll go into the woke part. So I will buy this on Lego. No, but seriously, I want that Lego set with the car, hands down, and I'm going to get it at some point with the penguin and the car in the back. Like this needs to be built and needs to be in my life. But this is definitely a should buy. It honestly is. It's my favorite live action Batman movie. He has taken the spot. I think it's really well done. And now, finally, to cover the woke thing. So, there was a scene, and it made me roll my eyes, where it was unnecessary how they did it, and they still could have accomplished it in a better way. She does this thing where she's stealing, and he goes, "Oh, well, spoiler, if you're done, have a nice one." Just the word spoiler comes in. Still haven't said nothing because she thieves. She's a thief. All right, I'm going. And she sits there and she goes, "Oh, you must have grew up rich because he said something." And then she's like, it's cool. Let's taking out these rich white men. And he's like, "No, you can't do it that way." And I'm like, why can't you just say they're rich and corrupt? Which in turn tells me that even though, now, like I said, this is a spoiler area, she's half, they casted her because the way she looks, even though in real life she's like, black. In this, she's like half black, half white, and they cast her. And Gordon is also black, and they did kind of play up the whole thing that it seemed like all the black people were good, like superly good, versus the white people that were the ones who grew up, specifically men. That was unnecessary. You could have just had the criminals be there, and you could have left that. She could have just been like these powerful rich people in Gotham. But no, I had to take that woke moment, and it did take me out the movie for a minute. Um, it's a very quick scene. I seen some people talk about it. They're like they did not like that scene because it felt forced. She could have just said, "Hey, these rich and powerful bad people," but she specifically said straight white male. So it was just annoying. That's it. Geek protagonist. You stay safe, you stay healthy, you stay real. Like I said, overall, I still enjoy the movie, and it's quick enough that I can get past it. So whatever. I like it. I enjoyed it very, very much. I should ship by, and I'll see you.